bring back the Bantustans. Johan, bring back the Bantustans. We need that. I don't think the Zulus, most Zulu people in KZN, I think people don't take the time to visit these places. If you go to KZN, those people are happy there. They are happy to keep their culture. You know? If you go in some parts of the Eastern Cape, Xhosa people, most of them who live in the homelands, they love what's going on there. So I think that is me to say we need a federal South Africa where those who want to be urbanized, who want to live in urban areas, like myself, we can stay here, make a living for ourselves. But once, 3 times, 4 times a year, I want to go back home. I want to go be with my people.
My guest is Kananelo Radimakatso, if I say that right. Yes, he's back after our conversation of a couple of weeks ago. Radi, I must say you've done very well. There's something like 50,000, 55,000 people have watched, and they loved every single minute of it. And I got hundreds and hundreds of requests to people say, bring him back. We want to see more of him, hear more of him. So welcome back. Really welcome back to the program.
Thank you very much, Johan, and thank you for having me for the second time. First time was amazing, and I'm hoping that we just have an amazing conversation. We did that the first time, and yeah, I'm looking forward to this.
Fantastic. Well, I was going to say my first question will have to be, what is it that this kid's got that I don't have, apart from youth and charm and brains, I guess?
You and I just spoke about it actually just now, and I think even when I look at the comments from a lot of the people who follow my content, they always say that I'm very authentic, very funny. And, sometimes I just be sitting behind the camera, just speaking my mind. And it turns out people love that. There's a market for authenticity in what we do. Before getting into this, I used to worry a lot about how saturated podcasting is, especially in South Africa now. It's starting to blow up a lot. But it turns out that there's a market for authenticity in South Africa, and people want to hear original ideas that are not filtered because you are scared of what might happen to you, things like this.
That's the key. I just told you I started in this business when I was 19 years old. 20 years old was my first ever appearance on South African radio. That means that I've been in this business now for 50 years. And as I said to you just before we started that our conversation today, is really that is the power that you have, is to be yourself and to be honest, and people sense it and they feel it. And I must say you do that exceptionally well. So it really is a great honor for me to have you back on again. But for those that do not know your show, tell us just briefly something about your podcast, and I'll be placing a little URL here at the bottom of the screen again to invite people to join your podcast. But tell us about it.
Yeah, South Africa first with Radimakatso.
So South Africa First with Kananelo Radimakatso is actually a channel that I started about 2 years ago. And what I did is I was reacting to videos about South African politics, especially when it comes to race relations and things like this. And so this year I decided, beginning of the year, that I was going to react to videos concerning apartheid because, I've always had a lot that people, especially politicians in South Africa, they love to use apartheid to say, look, apartheid was oppressing you. Apartheid did a number on your grandfather and your grandmother, and this is why you are struggling today. And so I thought, instead of listening to these people tell me about apartheid and using what I was taught in school, let me find out the speeches of Hendrik Verwoerd, John Forster, P.W. Botha, and them, and react to them and hear what they had to say from the horse's mouth. And it turns out that, it's not all that bad. And right now, what I'm trying to focus on is the debates that are hard-hitting in South Africa that have been done in the previous 20 years. So those will include Pieter Groenewald. I'm very heavy on Pieter Groenewald content because most South Africans, even myself included, we want him to become president. I've reacted to Ernest Roots. I just uploaded a video on Kali Krell. These are debates about race relations, whiteness, white privilege, and things like this. I just want to see and look at this discussion and draw my own conclusions from what is happening. So if that's what you like, South Africa Fest with Kananelo, Radimakatso is your channel.
Fantastic. You're doing a great job of that, I must say. I watched a little bit of your Pieter Groenewald expose of Ramaphosa's hypocrisy, your words, not my words. You mentioned now that you like Pieter Groenewald. What is this thing about Pieter Groenewald? Why are so many, it seems to me, black people really like Pieter Groenewald? What is it about Pieter Groenewald?
I think specifically about Pieter Groenewald, I also want to touch on Freedom Front Plus, but specifically on Dr. Pieter Groenewald is that he's a sharpshooter, he's a straight talker, he doesn't mince his words. And as we just spoke right now, it turns out in South Africa, people are tired with dressing up how they feel and how they speak. They want to hear authentic people telling them the truth as they see it. And Pieter Groenewald is one person who's very much capable of doing that. Yeah. And I mean, you look at what he did at the correctional services. He saved South Africans millions and millions of rands by ensuring that, you know, the prisoners are self-reliant in that he built bakeries, equipping these people with skills. And if you look across the board in the GNU with the ministers that we have, you don't see a minister that says we saved money. All of them, they just want to spend. And, you know, Pieter Groenewald shows that he cares for South Africans. And he spoke also about bringing back corporal punishment in the prisons. I think South Africans love this because they see it as a form of justice. You know, I mean, if you look at videos that you will see on social media, you will have some people finding criminals. There's agencies that find criminals and moor them hard before they release them. South Africans react to that type of content and they love it. And so by default, they already connect with the messaging of Pieter Groenewald. We need somebody in South Africa, Johan, who's not scared to speak the truth and who has the willingness to do the hard work. And Pieter Groenewald looks like that guy. And extending this to Freedom Front Plus. Freedom Front Plus is a party, you know, it sounds like now I'm a member or a politician of Freedom Front Plus, but it seems to me like a political party that says, I mean, it doesn't go to you and say, vote for me, vote for me, vote for me. It stays, it does what they do what they do, and they hold on to their principles and values, and they say, if you are going to vote for us, this is what you're going to get. They are not willing to change themselves to appease a lot of people and things like this. They say, we know what works, and this is who we are. If you love us, come. If you don't, it's fine. Go try the EFF and see how it goes.
Am I right if I say, in terms of Pieter Groenewald and maybe by extension to the Freedom Front Plus, the attraction, it seems to me, I'm interpreting it now on your behalf, is strength on the one hand, so very solid ideas, very straightforward in communicating them, but also a sense of fairness, I think, is what one gets from Pieter Groenewald. Am I right if I say it like that?
Yes. So he's a very hardened man to people who go out of the way to make the lives of other people very difficult. And you need that in South Africa. And he's a very soft man to the people who need his help. I think I've seen, I don't know who actually said this, I forgot, but there's a quote that says, it is better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener at war. So it means that you always have to be a warrior. You should be willing to fight the bad guys. And, you know, you should have that softness about you that those who actually need you, you are able to support them. I mean, you'd be shocked. There's one time I had likened him to Jesus. Would you believe it? I said, this is how Jesus was. Jesus didn't care about the priests and whatever. He thought these people are robbing the people. And, he gave them a hard time. But when it came to his sheep, Jesus cared and he led them to life. So.
I'm going to make a point of trying to get this to Minister Groenewald to share this with him. You also recently had one of your programs dealt with the discussion between Aaron's Roots and the chap from Mzonele, from the Inkonto Isizwe party, about self-determination, about scrapping 235. What are your views on this debate that Aaron's had with our friend from the Inkonto Isizwe?
Thank you for that question. Great question, Johan. As a matter of fact, our South African Constitution, Johan, tells us that you have the freedom to associate and dissociate with whomever you want. You have the freedom to do that. And if I want to only associate with the Basotho in a small village, I should be afforded the opportunity to do that in my own community, And I think in the Constitution, our South African Constitution extends that right mostly only to individuals, and it lacks when extending that particular right to communities. But I think as communities, I want to be around my own people. Of course, I love everybody, but I'm grounded mostly when I'm around my own people. And most people who make an argument that we do not need self-determination in South Africa, I always ask them, have you ever went to KwaZulu-Natal and went to these homelands and told the people there that you don't want this? Have you ever went to Kwakwa there at the Basotho Cultural Village? It's in the name itself, Basotho Cultural Village. It's about the Basotho. And I went there when I was a kid. I'm also planning to go there now as an adult. And when my son grows older, I'm going to take him there to see how the Basotho did things historically, how we used to communicate, how we used to solve conflicts among us. I love that. I want to keep that. I want my child to know about that. It turns out to me that most people only hate it when it happens when it is done by the Afrikaner people. It's just, there's this innate hate for Afrikaner people in South Africa, and maybe later we can also go in a little bit into how I think the Afrikaners built this country. So it's about that association with the people you want, and also just having a lot of education within the people who are from your own culture. This is South Africa. We say united in our own diversity. What diversity are we talking about? We're not talking about diversity of color. We are talking about diversity of values, diversity of worldviews, diversity of culture and traditions. And when we come together, we make this magic called South Africa happen.
I grew up in an Afrikaans community and an Afrikaans school. I grew up and I was, as a kid, enormously made aware of my identity as an Afrikaner and a particular pride in my language. Does one have that amongst other ethnic groups in South Africa as well?
I think maybe if you could explain how you don't see the Zulus do it, but as far as I'm concerned, the Zulus, they are the ones doing it. You look at the marches that are happening in South Africa of illegal immigration. When the Zulus go to the streets, they even wear their Zulu attire. And I also have some Zulu friends. When I talk to them, how do you know somebody is Zulu? Is because they'll tell you Mumzulu. That's how you know somebody is Zulu. So I think the Zulus, they are top of the list next to the Afrikaner people, of course. And the Basotho people, because I'm from the Sotho tribe, but of course in the Free State, you don't get to see this emboldened as much as you would if you maybe you could get access to passport and then go to Lesotho. You will see how amazing it is. But of course, Lesotho is not South Africa. It is a whole different country. But the Zulus. Let me go with the Zulus. With the Sothos, I'm not so sure. I don't see it much often. But if you can go to Kwakwa, So it depends where you are. If you can go to Qwaqwa, where you are much more closer to Lesotho, you will see people still riding horses. You'll see some people still wearing blankets and traditional attire all day, every day. Now, are those people illegal immigrants? We can leave that to debate. But yeah, I think it's mostly the Zulus and a little bit with the Sothos.
Yeah, but just in the urban context now, if I'm to go into a township, how do I distinguish between a Zulu or any of the other ethnic groups? There's nothing visible that I can see or feel. And I guess my question is also, when you as a black man live within a township, do you know when you walk across the road that that's a Zulu chap and that's from another ethnic group? How do you know that? How do you sense that?
No, you don't. You just hear with the language. Only the languages are different. And when do you get to see it? On Africa Day, because on Africa Day, everybody wears their traditional attire, but no, we are more urbanized. Yeah, we just coexist amongst each other. But there's still that preference amongst people that, even with the Zulus in Gauteng, for example, they're not the same as the Zulus in KZN. The Basotho in Gauteng are not the same as the Basothos in the Free State. So it's not really in how we dress, how we do things and things like that, but it's usually in the language, And also when we do traditional ceremonies, we like to slaughter goats. Certain types of people, maybe the Xhosas, slaughter goats for a particular type of a ceremony, and they have a way that they do it, and the Basotho as well have a way that they do it. But looking at us virtually when nothing is going on, it would be very hard to detect.
I want to talk to you about some contentious issues in South Africa. I want to hear your viewpoint. And when I say I want to hear your viewpoint, I'm kind of using you as an instrument to help me break out of my own bubble and to help me understand young Black South Africa. So I want to push you a little bit in that corner and say, represent young Black South Africa for me and tell me how they view a number of issues that I want to touch on. And if I look at what's happening in South Africa right now, I made a little list for myself here of what are the contentious issues in South Africa at the moment. One is certainly Donald Trump's immigration program for Afrikaners. I've just 2 days ago done an interview with a young chap who is trying to get refugee status to go to the USA. I was wondering, how do Black people, and especially young Black people, how do they talk about this subject? How do they feel about Trump's Afrikaners and the refugee program and the label that Afrikaners had gotten as a persecuted people? How do young Black people discuss this issue and feel about it?
Well, I will speak about it from my own perspective, as I look at the issue. And my thing is, honestly speaking, Johan, we've had calls in a form of songs, kill the farmer, kill the Boer. And there's people who live in the farms who've actually experienced these horrible atrocities being, unleashed on their family members. And my thing is, this is South Africa. This is a democracy. If you want to leave because you are scared for your safety, by all means, you can go. If you feel that you will get better opportunities in America and, South Africa won't ever change, by all means, you can leave. But if you feel that, as you are saying, that, Afrikaans is a South African originated language made here, and if you care about that particular legacy and you care about South Africa, where this country can go if we all work together as Black and white people, then, I am happy to see you in South Africa, and thank you for staying here and actually putting on a good fight. And we know that, Johan, majority of the people who leave South Africa are the people who contribute to the tax base of the country. We have close to about 7.7 million people contributing to the tax base. And honestly, if you look at it in terms of ethnicities and demographics, who contributes a lot of, say, I will call it business or corporate tax in South Africa, is mostly the white people. So I wouldn't know if these are the English people or the Afrikaner people. However, I don't want to see these people leave. It doesn't matter who they are. If you are contributing taxes to South Africa and you are not breaking the law and you take care of your community, you are an asset to this country. We need you in this country. We cannot let good South Africans go because, you know, we hate their skin color. In my own view, that's how I see it. If you are really helping this country, shout out to you. I love you. You are a brother to me. It doesn't matter your skin color. Even if you were black and you are still contributing positively to South Africa, I see you as a brother. But you know, if you're just gonna go because of your skin color and things like this, and you know, you don't see any hope in South Africa, you are more than welcome to go. But I don't think, you know, it serves South Africa any good in the long term if you say this is a country you care about.
Afrikaners are saying, claiming, not all Afrikaners, but some Afrikaners are saying we are a persecuted people. That's a pretty a tough thing to say. You're a persecuted people. What does it mean to you as a black person?
I want people in South Africa who care about this country. And Johan, the only mostly patriotic South Africans I've ever seen are the Afrikaners and the Zulu people. Well, the Zulus are mostly centered around their tribe. However, the very first time I ever saw a house painted with a South African flag and I saw South African flag in somebody's yard is when I moved to a white neighborhood. Johan, these are the people who care about South Africa. Honestly, I mean, if we can just stop BSing each other, these are the people who care about South Africa. And how do I know this? You look at during a time when the Afrikaner people had control of South Africa. They built this country. They built the infrastructure. They understand South Africa more than any other group in South Africa. And I know it is not comfortable for every other group in South Africa to hear this and listen to a young black person speaking like this. They don't appreciate this, but it is the truth. By their fruits, you shall know them. I'm only looking at the fruits. What are you building for South Africa? What have you done for South Africa? And the results are there. And also, you look at what AfriForum labeled a white group NGO in South Africa. You look at how much money they are able to pull. These people for over 20 years have been able to gather over 1.2 billion rands. 95% of these funds, you can actually see the real work. They're closing the potholes. Yeah. They worked with the solidarity movement to build a university. They have watch groups in a lot of, I think, over 160 small towns across South Africa. So they are putting their money where their mouth is. Show me any other group in South Africa that's doing that. You won't find any, Johan. These are the people who love South Africa as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I'm happy you say that because I happen to be a white Afrikaner, so I'm very happy when you say that. Xenophobia is a big theme in South Africa at the moment. There's a lot of anti-immigration feelings, and I think there's been this ultimatum that has been given to immigrants from the rest of Africa, other countries, to leave the country by, I think, the 30th of this month, if I'm right. That's brought about a lot of fear and anxiety in the country. How is that all viewed by young people, young South Africans, young black young South Africans?
Oh, we are heartful. On says heartful, Johan. If you go to the townships, you find these Spaza shops, you know, that are owned by illegal immigrants in South Africa. You watch TV shows that expose people who sell drugs. It's illegal immigrants, mostly from Nigeria. Young people are tired of these people in our communities harassing us, selling us drugs, and destroying our youth. As a matter of fact, me, as far as I'm concerned, I think, you know, the 30th is way too far. I think we should have done this way very earlier. South Africa, and this is one issue that is also getting South Africans to agree on one issue, that this is our land. We have a birthright to this place. for us to share it with other people just because, they have a similar skin color to us, but their first act of entering this country is literally just breaking the law. So this is an issue that shows you that South Africans actually, when we are together, we love law and order. So it shows that we love law and order. And when you look at what is in the media right now, they are telling us that we are violating and hitting the illegal immigrants, and they can't even show you one illegal immigrant that has been violated in ways that that are not warranted, and in ways that you can say this person actually didn't deserve this. Because in South Africa, there's this sense that most illegal Nigerians, and I always stress Nigerians because we are more loving to Kenyans and Ghanaians because they understand what civility is. It's illegal Nigerians that we have a problem with.
What do you say to Julius Malema when he talks about Pan-Africanism, one Africa?
I say he can go to the nearest hell, Johan. If he wants Pan-Africanism, he should go to Addis Ababa, to the African Union, and do his African Pan-Africanism there. This is the southern tip of South Africa, and this country belongs to South Africans who have a birthright here, who have a lineage here, who have a history here. That Pan-African, and it turns out that, every time they speak about Pan-Africanism and African unity, it's always people moving from top of Africa, coming to unite in South Africa. I've never seen South Africans go to Zimbabwe and say, let's unite in Zimbabwe. I've never seen anybody go to, say, for example, Somalia and say, Africa unite, let's unite in Somalia. Why? Because honestly speaking, these countries are horrible. It's not livable there. These people want to come to South Africa, take opportunities in South Africa from the people of South Africa while adding no value. And at the end of the year, they pack their bags and they go spend money in their own countries, adding no value to South Africa.
Yeah. Question to young South Africans. I guess your answer is going to be no, but let's try this. View Africans from the rest of the continent as part of their family, our family, an African family. Does that sentiment exist überhaupt amongst young Black South Africans in South Africa?
Yes, I don't think South Africans, especially the young South Africans, are unreasonable people. In fact, we understand the law of South Africa. We interact amazingly with people who are here legally. For example, I work in an international office. At an international office, I help everybody, Johan, everybody that's coming from Zimbabwe, coming from Lesotho, all over the world. I'm friends with everybody across the world. And I'm as robust as I am right now with my views when I'm with them. And a lot of them actually support us. There's a lot of, and this thing is not talked about a lot, there's a lot of legal migrants in South Africa who support the South African sentiment that illegal immigrants are destroying this country. So
if you Black people, young Black people regard themselves as Africans as well in the broader sense of Africa, I guess my question would be, would white South Africans, would they be allowed to say that they are Africans too?
More than, who can I say? More than a Chinese person who came here as an immigrant. You are an African, and the Afrikaner people are more South African than a Nigerian that comes here with a visa. These are the people, I mean, yeah, a lot of people just don't understand history. This could be a whole podcast in of itself. So you just need to understand history to know that white people in South Africa, especially the Afrikaners, they are Africans as a Zulu person is an African.
I want to talk to you about another talking point in South Africa, or another focus in South Africa, the Madlanga Commission, Cops and Politicians Protecting Criminals. It's been going on for months now, but the last couple of weeks have been particularly explosive. What has caught your attention about this whole commission?
So honestly, when it first started, I thought, oh, another commission. I don't like this. You're just wasting money. But it turns out this one is more different because it is not around one man, just as the previous commission where it was around Zuma and the state capture. This one is about SAPS capture and the whole political system capture and in the hands of mafia and syndicates in South Africa. So I'm glad that as South Africans, that which we have been suspecting about the SAPS, that the SAPS doesn't serve South Africans. In fact, it has created its own network within the state that works to subvert justice in South Africa, that works to support criminality. So I'm glad that as South Africans, we are seeing that all of this is coming out and we are starting to see politicians that are associated with these people. I mean, you saw what happened with Hangwani Maumela, his connection to Ket Matlala, as well as Cyril Ramaphosa. We are finding out more and more that you cannot just vote for somebody just because they are rich and you think they wouldn't be corrupt. Yeah. If somebody is corrupt, they are corrupt. And as far as I'm concerned, we should stop giving this country to black politicians. So it for me, as far as I'm concerned, it appreciates that particular sentiment. In fact, it conforms. There's a word I'm trying to use that I'm just forgetting, but it speaks to that particular fact that these people cannot be trusted. And also, what is interesting recently, I mean, it shows that we cannot even trust our intelligence. This intelligence works to get, political protection from politicians, and also the politicians protect ratchet police people who commit criminality in South Africa. So it exposes a lot of things. I'm happy about that.
You mentioned the name of Cyril Ramaphosa. Do you think that Cyril Ramaphosa, by virtue of the fact that he was one of the first, if not the first, beneficiary of black economic empowerment in the real sense of the word, and now a multimillionaire, don't you think he ought to be put on the very top of the ladder of the corrupt in South Africa?
Yes. And, Ramaphosa should be charged with treason, Johan. I could argue right now that Ramaphosa, because he was one of the people, in fact, major negotiators for this current constitution that we have, I could argue that Ramaphosa negotiated for this constitution while at the same time trying to come up with a union within which is going to benefit from this constitution that is drafted. So I could say that Ramaphosa ran game on a lot of people in South Africa. How did he become rich? What product does Ramaphosa sell that benefits me right now sitting here, that warrants him being a billionaire? I've never seen one. I've never seen one. Ramaphosa is a beneficiary of apartheid. You know how they always tell you that in fact, most white people in South Africa are beneficiaries of apartheid. I could argue that Ramaphosa and Motsepe are the biggest beneficiaries of apartheid, more than every white person I know.
There's so much poverty in South Africa. I've said it a number of times on this podcast of mine that while you and I are sitting here having a chat, there will be 14 million people, according to the World Bank, according to the IMF, that will go to bed tonight with not sufficient food in their stomachs. So I guess my question is it fair? You talked about Ramaphosa now. Is it fair to be offended by the new rich in South Africa? The so-called, I think they call them tenderpreneurs, the black diamonds, the ostentatious wealth that you see in South Africa. And I read something today that shocked me a little bit. That there are young people in South Africa. I think the word they use, I wrote it down here, is something like, and please help me out here, Izikhothane or something like that. Izikhothane. I'm sure I don't get it right. Izikhothane, which is young people eating to destroy expensive clothing and cars and things like that to show off their wealth.
And food, just throwing it away. Just
Yeah. Isn't it just the most disgusting vulgarity that you could possibly think of?
Yeah, it really is. I mean, these tender guys, I mean, you should look at the till sleeps they show you. In fact, they take pictures after spending money on alcohol. And you know, if you were working honestly and hard for this money, you wouldn't be wasting it like this. That's what they do. And then you go to the street from which they come from in one township somewhere in South Africa, you go there, and 99% chance you're gonna find out there's potholes. In fact, the neighbor to where he's from, and even some of the people who come from the same family as him, they are very poor. These people, they don't use money in a good way that benefits the next person. It's always about them looking fresh, living lavishly, and then going back to the townships to flex on the same people that, you know, when asking for these tenders, I'm sure they put some, I've never filled in a tender form, but I'm sure they write there to benefit the black people previously disadvantaged. But they don't do that. I mean, you look at with one lady, kind of what's her name? There's this one black lady, Mom Keys, living billionaire lifestyle. His son, her son owns a football club in South Africa. She's a beneficiary of these tender systems. And you look at the township where she's from and you go there, the people are living in poverty. There's one right now, Johan, in the Northwest called My Soul. He's an internet sensation. He just bought a house for 200 million in Cape Town and he did a splash. It was for everybody to see. But then you go to Northwest and you ask about unemployment there. As a matter of fact, I found out that this year, Northwest ranked the highest in terms of unemployment in the country. And then you look at in white communities. In white communities, when most people are wealthy, as a matter of fact, they help organizations like the AfriForum. Their wealth is dispersed. It goes into the communities. It helps other communities, you know? That's how it is. And I'm still asking right now, Johan, show me one black group like AfriForum. You won't find it because even if it's there, it's a private club that you need private membership, and obviously it is capped all the way up there. You and I, you see, if even you living in Europe, Johan, you wouldn't even match up to enter into these clubs. So it's ridiculous as far as I'm concerned. The black wealth doesn't go to benefit all the black people. It is concentrated amongst the few black elite.
Isn't it amazing that most of them are members of the African National Congress? That's an organization created 80 years ago to fight
no surprise there.
Of people, to fight for the emancipation of people. My next question is maybe a little bit more, got a bit more of an ideological tint to it. Is it fair to, is there something in it when people say Nelson Mandela sold us out?
Well, it depends what you deem selling out as. So did Mandela say we are going to have a South Africa that works for everybody? Yes, he did. He did say that. Do we have a South Africa that works for everybody? No. So in that sense, he's a sellout. When most people say Nelson Mandela is a sellout, they mean that Nelson Mandela said South Africa shall belong to the black people. During his fight for freedom, especially in his younger years, you would imagine that Nelson Mandela actually went to jail for domestic terrorism. That's how the man went to jail. So he was actually fighting for black people. He was a black supremacist in that particular period in time. So the people who existed during then, and seeing him actually working with the white people and trying to negotiate. To those people, Nelson Mandela is a sellout. But to the white people who said, we want a non-racial South Africa to be negotiated, when Nelson Mandela became president, and for the first few years, also during Thabo Mbeki, I think those people will appreciate Nelson Mandela. Those are the people who will actually say, well, we love Nelson Mandela for this, and he actually did what he could. If you ask me, do I think that Nelson Mandela is a sellout? I think Nelson Mandela was never a sellout. As a matter of fact, he's lived out who he was. He never lied actually coming into politics. You know, he told us that he is for Black emancipation and he's going to do everything possible to do it. And he was actually the leader of the Umkhonto weSizwe that was actually terrorizing Black communities and necklacing. And by necklacing, I mean putting tires on the necks of the Black people who supported apartheid and actually had alternative viewpoints to him. So he was violating and killing the Black people who shared a different viewpoint to him. At the core of, you know, this business, that's what Nelson Mandela was doing. He went to jail for that. And when he came out, his heart was a little bit softened. And I think this is what most Black politicians need. We need to send these people to jail. They need to break the rocks. These people must bake us bread. We need to take them to the streets. They must clean our streets. Maybe they will find God, you know, in their hearts. And, you know, it will suit them a little bit, just as it did with Nelson Mandela.
The question I imagine that would follow my Mandela question is, how strong is Julius Malema, and what kind of support does he have amongst young people in South Africa? I spoke to a podcast a couple of weeks ago who said to me, Malema has got the young people in his pocket. With that, the question really is, do young people in South Africa have a taste, a hunger for a more socialist system in South Africa?
From 2014, when the party was in full effect in South African politics, most young Black people, you know, if you spoke to a young Black person randomly, they shared similar views as Malema because they saw him as this figure that is going to unite Africa and give them the free land and things like this. However, since 2024, I mean, we saw even in 2024, 29 May, that EFF actually lost a lot of support. You know, one would argue that the MK party took some of that support, and, you know, some of the majority of the young people who supported the EFF still have the views carried by Malema and the EFF. But what I'm happy about, what is happening this year, is that, first of all, Malema was found guilty of hate speech.
Mm-hmm.
Malema lost all the big giants in the EFF. So this is a very isolated man. He's very alone and he's panicking. It's very cold within the EFF. And I would also argue that he's around a lot of people he doesn't actually trust, because his trust was broken by the people he moved with from the ANC. He's losing support in that particular respect. And also, the new evidence that just came out that since 2021, Julius Malema has been working very closely with General Khan to subvert justice, to cut short the hands of justice. In fact, he was receiving questions from General Khan to ask in Parliament. And to the young people in South Africa who used to vote for the EFF, it signals one thing, that this man doesn't represent us. He doesn't represent our constituency. And by us, I mean the young Black people in the EFF who still support that particular trade. It is clear to them that Julius Malema doesn't represent them. He doesn't represent them. He represents his lobbyists. He represents his funders like your Abo and Mazotti, Andriano, is it Andriano or Adriato Mazotti, with his open border policy, because we understand that Mazotti is a certified official cigarette smuggler. So if he wants open borders, it's for Mazoti to come here. So I'm glad that the young people in South Africa are starting to see that Julius Malema doesn't represent them. He represents whoever funds him, and he will say whatever possible to make the young black people emotionally riled up, because that is how he gets to secure his votes.
You said emotionally riled up. If I want to emotionally rile up a white South African, or an Afrikaner at least, I have to start talking about black economic empowerment. Is black economic empowerment, is that affirmative action, or is it race-based discriminatory laws? Are they discriminatory laws?
Yes. I mean, if you say black economic empowerment, so say right now, Johan, you have a business in South Africa, it hires, say, 45 people. You are doing well, you hired people within your company because you identified. Actually, Radimakatso is good at this. Maybe let me make him executive creative director for my company. And Radimakatso is actually very good at his job. And you find everybody else, because they are good at their job. But then the problem comes, you are doing very well because of this team that you have. And you want to scale, you want to go beyond 50 people that you want to hire and things like this. The government starts coming in and tell you, what skin color should the people in your company be? How many of them you should have? How many females you should have? And it actually makes it very difficult for you to be able to fire these people, because also there's unions stopping you from firing the people who don't add value to your company. So based on that, if it's even in the word itself, black economic empowerment, why does it not say South African economic empowerment? It turns out to me that BEE is only about empowering a few black elite. And as a matter of fact, Dr. Pieter Groenewald correctly said it is a black elite enrichment. That's what BEE stands for, Black Elite Enrichment. Because if you can go to the townships and try to find out, how did BEE support your life? Is your life better today because we had BEE since 1994? They'll tell you a different story, Johan. But I guess if you ask somebody like Motsepe, oh, it works. If you ask somebody like Ramaphosa, of course it works. I mean, you can see the lives they live without ever producing a product that I'm using right now as I'm sitting here.
Do you think that white people 30 years post-apartheid still have some kind of a moral obligation towards black people because of what many will call the sins of apartheid? Do we still have a moral obligation? And should that moral obligation express it in something like BEE?
No. You and I, Johan, we both have a moral obligation to help the poor. But not the poor that are criminal, not the poor that break the laws of the country. We have a moral obligation, because I don't know about you, but I'm a Christian, and the Bible actually commands me. It doesn't ask of me. It commands me to be nice to my neighbor. It doesn't matter whether my neighbor is black, colored, or Indian. It commands me that I have to love my neighbor as I love myself. Meaning, if I'm warm, I should want my neighbor to also be warm. So skin color shouldn't matter. Everybody in South Africa, you have a moral obligation, just like in military or if you are a soldier, to your next man, to ensure that your fellow man that does the right thing, first of all, by himself, does the right thing for his family, and by extension to the community. Skin color shouldn't matter. If somebody is, can I say be a sinful here, Johan? If somebody is a bullshit person, you have no moral obligation to that person, even if that person was white or black. We should treat people based on the content of their character. A very wonderful philosopher and preacher, Martin Luther King Jr. said that.
Cyril Ramaphosa made his millions through, in fact, black economic empowerment, if we want to reduce it to the essence of it all. Young people today black young people, are they exploiting what I would call, for the benefit of this discussion, the sins of apartheid to become beneficiaries of black economic empowerment? And I guess the question really is that, or has that become a culture amongst young black people? The expectation that because I have a black skin, I've got a passport. Because I have a black skin, the doors will open for me. Has that become part of youth culture in South Africa, or how young people view their opportunities in our society?
I think young black people are looking for jobs. Johan, excuse me. 60% of young black people, 60% of the youth in South Africa do not have jobs, and majority of that is, it's black people. You look at when there's a post, for example, I saw there was a post as South African National Defence Force, I think it was in Venda or something. Thousands and thousands of young black people showed up there. So, as a matter of fact, young black people want opportunities to work. We are sick and tired of the grants from government. And those who loved the 350s, majority of them actually quickly saw that these 350s do not work. In fact, the government celebrates a young person with all the energy, Johan, which breaks my heart. With all the energy in the world, all the time in the world, you are at the peak of your human life. The government celebrates giving you a grant. Something is wrong with that. South Africans right now are tired, and also it spills into the fight against illegal immigration. The young black people in South Africa are telling us that illegal immigrants also have our jobs, and we need our jobs. That's what they're saying. And I don't think if these were the people who were expecting grants and who were expecting favors just because they are black, these are not the people who will be telling you that I need a job, I want a job, and I'm willing to keep a job. So if you were talking about maybe the black people who are, some of them in their 40s, in their 50s, they still have that thing because, they grew up during the 80s and the 90s when the ANC was promising them all of these things. These are the people who are still, holding on to the ANC and things like this. But the young black people, especially those who are below 35 and, just above 15 there, we know the game. We understand what is up. We have been lied to by the ANC. And the only way that you are going to get out of poverty is by putting in the time and treating people right. Working on the things you are interested in. A grant is not going to do nothing to you. As a matter of fact, Ronald Reagan said back in the day, if you hear a knock on your door and somebody says, hey, I'm from the government and I'm here to help, you have to run for your life.
Just on ground level, do you think that we, black and white, in South Africa, 30 years post-apartheid, have emancipated ourselves from not only petty apartheid, petty discrimination, or petty forms of discrimination, but do you think that we've built a society that is cohesive and strong enough to march towards the future? Have we dropped discriminatory practices?
I don't think we have, but we are on our way there. And the reason I'm saying this is because, so long as parties like the EFF still find expression in our society, I think we still have a long way to go, because these are political parties that are basing their whole ideology upon skin color. So we still have a long way to go in terms of that. So we haven't arrived, but we are on our way there. And the reason I'm saying this is because since 2024, in South Africa, we started seeing a shift in terms of how South Africans receive information. People are moving away from mainstream media, which has been used mostly by the ANC, especially the SABC and all their, minion radio stations and TV stations and things like this. They've been the ones pushing the agenda, psyoping, and by psyop I mean psychological operation, psyoping South Africans to see each other through race. And right now, there's a new generation of journalists, of independent media personnel that are coming up, like myself, who tell it like it is, because our only asset to South Africans, the reason why people keep coming back to watch us day in and day out, is because they are finding something from us that they don't find anywhere. And it's because we are able to tell them the truth about what happened during apartheid, what is happening today, who are the bad guys, and who are the good guys. So we are on our way there, but we are not there yet.
Do you believe that the ideas of the multicultural, multiracial democracy, the rainbow nation, do you think that that's still, well, a lot of people will say it's not alive anymore. Do you think it can be revived?
Yes, it can only be revived when people receive information. And this is what the ANC is stopping. Why is the ANC stopping Starlink from launching in South Africa? It's because the people in remote areas can then get access to Wi-Fi and they can find out information from themselves for themselves. They don't need the ANC telling them white people this, black people this. So as South Africans, as a matter of fact, during Codesa, it is the black South Africans who came with the term Rainbow Nation. It was not a politician. It was South Africans who said, we are a rainbow nation, we are different, but together we can form a beautiful nation and we can coexist happily ever after. South Africans want that. It's the politicians who don't, because they won't have bread or food on the table tomorrow if they start accepting the fact that, actually, there's nothing wrong with the white people in South Africa. There's not, as far as the relations between our races is concerned, they can't make money if they don't appreciate that particular fact. So South Africans are the ones who live for the dream of a united South Africa that thrives under this particular flag we have. You can also look at our flag. Our flag is literally a rainbow nation. We are a rainbow nation of people from different nations. In fact, Hendrik Verwoerd said this. He said, these black people in South Africa are not just tribes and, people who speak different languages. We are different nations who have chosen to coexist and live together in harmony, striving for a better future. That's what we want. Politicians don't.
Yeah, but structurally, how do you see that? Do you see that as one country, the concept of the multiracial democracy, or do you think there is something in the call of many people on the right wing that say we want devolution of power, that say we want more autonomy, that say we want federalization, some even say we want some form of balkanization of South Africa? So my question really is, do you believe still in the ideals of the one multicultural, happy family rainbow nation, or do you think the realities on the ground will move us more towards the idea of perhaps some form of federalization or balkanization, creation of autonomous regions, etc., in South Africa?
Johan, are you ready for this? Bring back the Bantustans. Johan, bring back the Bantustans. We need that. I don't think the Zulus, most Zulu people in KZN, I think people don't take the time to visit these places. If you go to KZN, those people are happy there. They are happy to keep their culture. If you go in some parts of the Eastern Cape, Xhosa people, most of them who live in the homelands, they love what's going on there. So I think that is me to say we need a federal South Africa where those who want to be urbanized, who want to live in urban areas, like myself, we can stay here, make a living for ourselves. But once, 3 times, 4 times a year, I want to go back home. I want to go be with my people. I don't think I would feel good, survive more than 5 years without just being with the Sotho speaking people. There's something about us special that I'm not able to express with words when I'm around. That's why, amongst the students at university level, some of them, they say, You know, when things get hard, you just need to go home and ground yourself. They might be saying that, you know, just because they're going through a hard time, but there's something very profound about that. When you go home, it grounds you. What is at home? It is the people who look like you, who talk like you, who do things like you, who don't put the pressure on you to be something that you are not. And in South Africa, we need that. We need to have our own provinces, you know, that are independent from each other, where we are able to negotiate with other provinces and also have a federal government whose main priority is securing the border, ensuring that we have a strong military, and ensuring that interest rates are managed and South Africans, you know, are not, you know, the savings of South Africans are not blown away by inflation. We need that as a federal central government. We need law and order at a federal government. However, as far as I'm concerned, Johan, we need the people in the Free State. We always argue that the Free State is more calm, is more open. The people are more willing to have a conversation than you would in Joburg. Joburg is too busy, too loud, and things like this. The people in the Free State, we love this. This is why I'm also still here. I love this. I don't like all of that, you know, rush hour thing, life that's going on in Johannesburg. I love this. I prefer this. And I think there's a sentiment that is shared by most South Africans. So we should have a federal government, understanding that we are different communities, but have patriotism to one flag and one South Africa to succeed, because it is only when South Africa succeed that all of us will succeed.
So Mortimer Marshall said, for the nation to live, the tribe must die. That's more or less what he said. In South Africa, we have the Zulu, the Xhosa, the Swazi, the Ndebele, the Pedi, the Tswana, the Sotho, the Tsonga, the Venda, the Shangaan, the Afrikaner, the English, the Portuguese, etc., etc., etc. So we can carry on. Are you, from a black point of view, say that that the tribe has died in South Africa? That there's enough.
Oh, sorry, you can go ahead.
The point I'm trying to get to is, are these different distinctions that I've just drawn here now, are they alive and well? Has the tribe actually vanished in South Africa? Maybe because of apartheid. You know, it's been said many times, apartheid brought the different tribes together in a nationalist struggle for their freedom. Is that disappearing? Has it disappeared?
Good one. Let me think about this. If you go to the townships and if you go in urban areas, it looks like that. It looks like the tribe in a traditional sense is dying, but there's a different kind of tribe that is sprouting up in South Africa. And it's a tribe of, I need to understand what are your values as far as employment is concerned. You know, I need to understand what are your values as far as community safety is concerned. The people are starting to form different tribes in South Africa that are community based. And, you know, this is a very cliche example to use, and most people don't like this. But you look at Orania. I don't think the people in Orania, you know, they've put themselves up together on the pure fact that they are Africans. I don't think they are just living there just because they're Africans, Afrikaner people, but they are Afrikaner people, and they are willing to build. They are willing to be self-sufficient. They are willing to educate their children. They are able to build an Orania that serves the needs of the people of Orania. That is a different type of tribe that is sprouting up in South Africa. And I've also, I think I saw a video, I'm just not able to remember quite clearly which small town this is, but it is in the Free State. And even Rob Herzog recorded a video and put it on his channel on the Truth Report, showing us an example of a historically Afrikaner town that became assimilated with the black people, where the black people and the Afrikaner people are coming together to build that particular small town. And also where I'm from in Senegal, AfriForum is there, Freedom Front Plus is there. They also work with communities within the township to ensure that they close potholes and they take care of the people who are vulnerable. So these will be the people living with disabilities, the old people, and child-headed households. They are working with these people, and sometimes when I'm home, I volunteer to some of these groups as well. And this is what is happening in South Africa. The type of tribe that is growing is a tribe that says, I care for my neighbor because I care for South Africa and I want to see this country work.
I suppose what I'm trying to figure out for myself from a long distance is, in general terms, not only your feelings, but the general kind of sentiments of the majority of South Africans in their different groupings, is the tension between the aspirations of building a one nation, the multicultural melting pot of South Africa, the ideals of that, versus the idea of a more tribally separated, divided South Africa with different units. And I'm trying to figure out where do the sentiments lie amongst Black people? Is there a taste for an own little piece of Zulu land and an own piece of Afrikaner land and an own piece of Xhosa or Swazi or Ndebele land? Whether it's in terms of geography or whether it's in terms of the way in which we organize our societies?
There's people in South Africa who prefer to live within their own Zulu little community. But also, those are the same people who appreciate the fact that they live in South Africa, that has to work and that has to function. And also with these types of things, Johan, it depends who you are asking. If you are in a city person, these are more cosmopolitan people. They want to live together. They thrive in, togetherness while being different. However, if you go in remote areas, these are the people of which most of South Africans live in the townships and in these remote areas. That's why I don't want to use the people who live in the urban areas as like an example for all of South Africa, because it really depends who you ask. But me personally, Johan, I think South Africans, you have every right to live in your own area where you are having a freedom of association with the people you want to associate with.
Yeah.
And you are also welcome now and then to break away from your group and go mingle with South Africans. There's an appetite for coming together as South Africans. And when I say South Africa first, it is not for me to say, let us put everybody into a melting pot, all cultures disappear, things like this. Because when cultures disappear, most people do not find a reason to leave. They don't understand who they are. They don't understand where they're going. So, of course, we still need this, but supporting that particular element with a patriotic spirit to say, as a Zulu nation, you actually won't thrive if South Africa is not thriving. And by South Africa, who do we mean? We don't just mean one Zulu person or your group. We mean the Shanganers, the Vendors, the Sothos, the Xhosas, the Afrikaners. Even if you disagree with them, you have to find a way to work together to make sure that South Africa stands out at the top. As Arasi, the coach of the Springboks, said, he said, Siya Kolisi is not the best thing about South Africa. South Africa is the best thing about South Africa. But guess what? We still need a Siya Kolisi. So if you look at it in terms of Siya Kolisi is one tribe, somebody else is another group, we understand the value you have. We understand the importance that you are as your own particular group. But South Africa is the best thing among all of you. And we must work together to ensure that South Africa thrives. Because when the world looks at us, like right now when they are saying South Africans don't like them, they're not saying the Zulu people are xenophobic. They're saying South Africans are xenophobic.
What you're also saying to me is that it is not a shame for an Orania to be an Orania. It's
Yes.
not a shame for those that say, you know what, I want to have my little space and I want to freely associate with who I want to associate with. That's what you're really saying to me, the freedom to. And that's why I think you draw the difference between the more urbanized people in South Africa and the rest of South Africans or groups in South Africa that want to and wish to find their own little space.
100%, Johan.
I think we are out of time, and I'm going to have to say thank you very, very much for this. It's a really great pleasure to talk to you, and I hope that we are going to touch base again and follow up, because I've got a whole string of questions I still would like to ask you and test your feelings on about, but I'm afraid we are out of time. So for now, I'll have to say thank you very much and invite you back for another talk in the future.
Thank you very much, Johan. You should visit South Africa one time, man. I would actually like to hang out and have some coffee with you. I would like to learn a lot from you, especially you being in the media, having been for a very long time. You told me that you started when you were 18. So there's a wealth of knowledge right there that I want to learn a lot from you. So one day when you are able to visit South Africa, please let me know that you are here.
I'd love to do that. Thank you very much. We'll talk again.
Thank you, Johan.